Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Parenting Through the Parsha with Rabbi Matt Shapiro.
Last weekend we had the Temple Beth Am Family Shabbaton, which is a really big undertaking. With a lot of people there, and by and large, it was an incredibly successful weekend, and people had a lot of fun. And there were also some issues that came up on Shabbat, behavioral issues with different kids who were there, nothing egregious, nothing extreme, but still, one or two things that needed some follow-up and attention. And one of my kids was one of the kids who didn't exactly make fantastic choices every step of the way over the course of Shabbat. And I was working for much of it, but Sarah, my wife, talked to him a bit, and I did as well later on. And what each of us impressed upon him, because there had been some back and forth. One group of kids did this, and then another group of kids followed up with that, was that, yes, context is important. And ultimately, it's not about what other kids are doing. It's about what you choose to do. That you are responsible for your own actions, for the choices that you make, both because it's important to have that integrity in terms of your own values, your own good choices, and because your choices in turn impact the people around you. You can change a course of action, not just for yourself, but you can have an impact on your peers, on the people who are engaging in certain patterns. You can have that impact. And both of those pieces, your own integrity and the impact of your behavior on other people, hold a lot of weight and hold a lot of importance. We're moving through the book of Vayikra, of Leviticus, and as we move through these Parshiot, through these Torah portions, there are a good deal of rules and regulations for priests, for Aaron and his sons and the generations of priests that followed that over time were responsible for the temple service. And it's been a good long time since we've had a temple. So this is a concept. These are teachings that may very well seem pretty distant for a lot of us. But I read a really interesting Hasidic teaching from Reb Zev Wolf of Zotomir, who, though it doesn't necessarily seem as such at first, it's actually a pretty radical reinterpretation of a lot of these rules and regulations. And what Reb Zev Wolf says is that all of us, we, the people of Israel, we're a kingdom of priests. So each one of us then has a role in bringing about holiness within the people. If the priests, the priestly class was responsible for holiness for the collective body of Israel, it's actually now today not about just that one class of people, which is a radical rereading of this whole concept. And so it's not just about a small sect. It's not just about one subset of the people. It's actually about all of us. We each hold responsibility for cultivating holiness. And he talks about how this is ultimately something that starts within each of us, that each one of us is responsible for our own spiritual life. Each one of us is responsible for our own choices, as it were. And through that, we cultivate holiness both within ourselves and then in turn amongst the people around us. So this, of course, connects pretty clearly with what I was talking about a few moments ago, that it might feel easy to point at other kids, to point over there, oh, this person's doing that, that person's doing this. But we have to start with ourselves, because we each have a responsibility to bring about holiness yes, within ourselves and also all around us. And so then it's a real challenge for us as parents to think about, well, how do we do that? How do we transmit that value to our kids? How do we communicate that to them? How do we help them instill that within themselves? And I'll offer something that I've offered before, which is that it starts with us, that our kids look to us as role models. Our kids learn from our own example. So then that then flips the challenge back on us. How do we cultivate holiness within ourselves? How are we accountable for our own actions? How do we cultivate holiness within our community? Because we are ultimately truly accountable for no more and no less than ourselves, uh, our household, in turn our people. But it starts within us, which is a lot. It can feel even overwhelming at times, for me at least, to think about how I can grow in my own spiritual connection, grow in the ways in which I cultivate holiness within myself, and try to exemplify that for others. That doesn't always feel easy. That isn't always easy. But if I take that on, when I take that on, I'm setting that example for my kids, which is really important, because that's how they can hopefully over time embody that for themselves too. And credits where it's due to my kid, who had his missteps over the weekend. He took accountability. He clearly took it seriously, which is no small thing. And it's helpful for me as well to remember that this is a process. It's not about flicking a switch. Okay, I've got it. It's an ongoing journey. It's an ongoing process for figuring out how to do that, to engage in that process, to work with others, to my kids, my family, try to figure out how to do that together. And I think in turn, that's why this idea resonates to me so strongly, and I think is such a powerful teaching. Because if it was just about a small group of people, then kind of the rest of us are sort of off the hook. But it's about all of us, that we each have that accountability for each other, because we are this kingdom of priests. That's what we aspire to be. And that starts within ourselves. And we can take that one day at a time, break it off into measurable chunks. And for me, at least right now, that's why it's helpful to have this Parsha to remind me of that work, to hold out that process so that I can learn, and hopefully in turn, my kids can learn a little bit from me.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.